Welcome back to this Modifying Doom 3 Editor series. Coming up is episode 1 of a special 3-part mini-series on building cinematics in the Doom 3 engine. In this part 1 we explore how to place and point static cameras. We'll also look at how to get our cameras rolling and moving using a simple script. If you're enjoying this series, please subscribe to our channel, leave a comment, like, dislike, or share this video with friends. Clicking the notification button gives you alerts when we post new content. Or swing by the channel Tom's World for a friendly visit and list of all our videos. Ever wonder how video games are built? Then stick with us for a fascinating look into level design in the Doom 3 editor. So cinematics, well, we're not going to stampede into making a cinematic in this first video. I think especially for people that are new to the editor or even veterans that might not be familiar with making cinematics. If we stampede into it, it's going to be a little bit overwhelming. So I think I want to break it off into sort of bite-sized chunks. So this first video, what we're going to do is we're going to concentrate on just placing a camera, show how to get it running with a script. Of course, we'll look at how to point a camera. That's all static camera work, and then of course we're going to look at how to get that camera moving, because that's kind of exciting part of it. Now you're gonna have to know a few camera fundamentals if you don't have a photography background, a movie background. I mean, we're going to be using references like tilt, pan, Dutch tilt, crane, dolly forward, in and out. So you really have to know those terms. I'm not going to go over them. I'll assume that you kind of know what they are, but also if you don't know, I think as I talk through it, you'll kind of get a sense of what these different terms mean. I'm starting with a very simple box map. Dimensions are 512 wide by 1024 long, and it is, let's see here, 256 high. Just a simple box map. In the top view here, in our orthographic view, you can see I have just 2 lights. That's just to illuminate the set, if you will, hit the wall, ceiling, floor. I have my player start here, of course, in the corner. Now you also notice I have one entity because of course we want something to look at here. So I place this guy here. If we look in the entity window, he's under Alpha Labs 2 underscore marine underscore helmet underscore P as in Papa 90. And he can be found if we just right click on our orthographic view here. If we go to Alpha Labs 2, he's right there. So I've just placed him in the map. Now unfortunately the render window doesn't show him, but he's just a marine, and he's in his IK pose there, just so we have something to look at. Final thing I did was I added a little light just to make sure that our character is lit nicely. And if we look in our top view here, it's a tiny little light, and it's just illuminating that guy just to make sure he's got some light. Sometimes when you light ambient, you put your ambient light in for your room, the character might be a little dark depending on how you look at him. So I always like to put a little light. To get a little bit more complicated, you can attach that light to the character or attach it to the camera to kind of give it an eye light, if you will. But for now, this is fine. You'll see why we're doing this. So if we go into the map real quick, you can see it here. That's the simple box map, something to give us a start with, and there's our little character with his IK pose. Okay, so let's get out of here. So let's place a camera. Very simple. We'll go in our top view, we'll right click on our orthographic view, and we want to find Funk Camera View. There it is there, Funk Camera View. So we'll just click on that. Let's put that right in front of our guy there. Put him on a major grid line. And we'll bring him up to about eye level. There he is there. And all we're going to change on that camera is just the name, because we don't want to have to type in funk underscore camera underscore view. Sorry, funk underscore camera view underscore 1 every time we want to reference this in our script. So let's just change that to something a little bit more simple. And we'll just call it cam 1. Hit enter. Make sure it took. There it is there. Let's save. Let's compile. And that's it for our map work for this first stage. So let's just minimize that. We're going to go into a script here. This is just one I wrote for myself when I was doing my dry run, and I was kind of familiarizing myself with all this code. You'll see this bit of code actually has every camera move conceivable in it. And if you do want a copy of this, just drop me an email or leave a comment in the video or whatever, and I can email you a copy of this, or you can just type it out. We're not going to get into all these commands. So we're going to start off with a new notepad here real quick. And we're going to write a script for our movie 2 map. So let's put these together nicely here. Okay, so first thing we want to do is we want our script to execute at runtime. So we're just going to copy this line here. And I want to make sure I got my end bracket in there. So I always put it in just so I don't forget it. Okay, so there it is there. So this allows us this void space main parentheses parentheses space bracket, and then ending bracket, whatever we put in here, it's going to execute at runtime. That's how we do that. We don't want to have to trigger that camera every time. Okay, so there's our first command. Now, what we want to do to turn our camera on, this is the command right here. So let's just grab that and copy it in here. And let's format this nicely so we can kind of see what we're doing. We can put that there. Yeah, and parentheses is fine where it is. Okay, so to get a camera moving, the actual command is sys.setCamera. Make sure that it's the capital C for Charlie is a capital because that is case sensitive. And then within parentheses here, we want to reference our camera view. So we have to change this. And if you remember, we called it cam1, and anytime we reference any entity on our map in our script, we have to preface it by a $sign. So there it is there. Make sure that that semicolon is at the end of the line. Then if you remember, in scripts, any line that starts with 2 forward slashes, the engine will not execute that line. And we just use this to put in a little note for ourselves. So we know that this line is turning the camera on. Now what we want to do is turn that camera off. So let's grab this line here. Let's put it in our script. So the command to turn a camera off is this right here. So it's sys.firstperson. Make sure that the P is capitalized because it is case sensitive. Parentheses, parentheses, and then followed by a semicolon. And then we've got a little note here to ourselves that turns the camera off. Now we want a little bit of a delay before the camera turns off because we want to see what we're doing here. So we'll put in our trusty syswait command. Let's put that guy in there. Let's line it up nicely. And how long do we want our camera to be on for before it goes back to first person? Let's say 5. Okay, so that's all we need for our code to get our camera on and off. So if you remember, we have to get the script working, it's got to be in the same file folder as our map, which is here. We've called our map movie 2. And it's got to have the extension of script. Okay, so let's hit enter. So there's our script done. Let's go back to our map. And all we have to do is jump into our map, movie 2. And what should happen right at runtime is our camera should come on, and there it is. It should linger for 5 seconds, and then we should go back to our first person view. Okay, nice. There it is there. Now, let's say we want to figure out how to point a static camera. Like for example, let's say our camera is way up here. Okay. Okay, let's get rid of this wall so we can see what we're doing. Actually, let's deselect everything. Let's hide that wall. Okay, so we can see our cameras here, and we can see that every time we put in a fun camera, it does give us that little arrow if you just look in the render window here, and that's pointing straight ahead. So if we run this, we're not going to see anything, right? So we want to point this guy down. So let's select that camera, and if you remember back in the Klaxon video, I showed you how to use this free rotation tool. So we're just going to do that. So we're going to go into the angle that best suits the rotation that we're doing here, which for me is this front view. And if you look here where my mouse is circling, this is sort of the angle we want. There's our player start. There's our little marine. Here's our camera. We want that to point down. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this view. We're going to select the camera. We're going to go into this free rotation tool up here, which I've showed you before again in my Klaxon video. We're going to grab this, and actually let's just position this so you can see it. Watch the render window as I do this. So I'm going to just right mouse click and drag, and watch the render window. You can see the arrow going down. Okay, and we're basically pointing that camera roughly where we want it. Now there's a slightly better way to point the camera, which I'll show you in a minute, but this will kind of get us where we're going. So this rotation tool, we can control our tilt of our camera up, down, we can control our pan, and we can also control Dutch roll. We'll show Dutch roll in a second. But just to see how this works, let's just go ahead and deselect the camera. Let's hit save. Let's hit compile. And now what we should have when we run this is a high camera angle that points down. And we have it right there. Perfect. So that kind of gives it a kind of a slightly different flavor. So if you kind of know camera theory, you know, pointing a camera does have some dramatic effect. So let's move this camera back down again in front of our guy, and let me just show you what Dutch tilt does. You know pan, I mean that's just to go left and right, right? But Dutch tilt, it's kind of a special effect. So All right, so I just want to look at my render window. Let's get this thing pointing straight forward again. So we'll hit our rotation tool. Let's drag, get that point. Okay, there we go. Now, Dutch tilt. It's kind of a special effect. You probably won't use it too much. It's kind of almost like a rotation along this axis here. You'll see in a second. So in order to get the rotation tool going, we want to go to this side view, or for me, it's a kind of a front view. Yeah, front view, I guess. So we'll select the camera and we'll go again into our free rotation tool. And while we're in our front view, if we left mouse button and shift down, watch the camera here in the render window as I do this. You can see that moving. Okay, it's kind of subtle, but you can see it. So let's just give it a little bit of a Dutch tilt. Let's save. And here's what a Dutch tilt looks like. So let's BSP and go into the map. And we should get this effect. So that's our Dutch tilt. Next, it's kind of almost reminiscent of the 1960s Batman series. Some of you younger folks might not remember that, but well, it's still on in reruns. So you can see it on YouTube. So, but that's Dutch tilt. So basically, that's placing a camera, getting it to run with a script, and then also kind of pointing it in the right direction. So let me just get this back, pointing straight up and down. Now, there's one other way we can point a camera. It's quick if you're lazy. Well, you know, if you're not lazy, but okay. So let's say our camera angle is way over here in the corner and is way up there, and we want to point the camera at our character, basically. All right, so if we look on our top view, our camera is way off over here, and it's up quite high in our side view, we can see. Now, if we want to point that camera at our guy from that angle, see way up here, we can use our rotation tool, but there's a slightly easier way. If we go to top view and I right click, I can come down here to target null. Okay, so where's our target? Null. There it is there. And let's place that target null roughly around head level of our Marine. Now, since it's not rendering, we can't tell exactly where his head is, but roughly about there. Yeah, that's about right. Okay, so we placed a target null basically where we want our camera to be pointing, right? Okay, so in our top view, what we could do is we can select our camera, then we can select our target null, and we can hit our little Control K, and basically we're giving the camera a target, right? So Control K. If we look inside the render window, we can see our path, and if we click on our front camera, we know that that basically puts in a target, right? So target null 1, there it is there. Now, what is interesting is that we actually click on the target null, shift left mouse button. It actually shows us in the render window, if we kind of expand it maybe, basically where our camera is pointing. So we can almost do a dry run, and we can see that it's pointing basically in the exact direction we want it to point. So let's deselect that. Let's save. Let's compile. And if we go into our map, we can see that our camera is pointing at our null, and we have done no rotation. So that's kind of a funky angle. So, all right, so that'll conclude putting in a static camera. I showed you how to do pan, tilt, and Dutch roll, and we looked at one way to point the camera just using a target null. So that's good for a static camera. So why don't we have a look at how to get our camera moving? So I've just tidied up the map. I just deleted the target null, and I repositioned my camera there just in front of our little Marine down at eye level just to get started for this next part. So what we want to do is we want to have a look at how we can get this camera moving. I'm going to start off with a no draw texture, and I'm just going to draw a little 16 cube box, and I'm going to place it right behind my camera. You can see in the render window right there. And I'm going to right click, and I'm going to turn that into a Func mover. And this is alphabetical order. There it is there. I'm going to hit Shift O to make sure that the origin is centered. And I'm going to add in a couple of key vowels on this Func mover. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change its name. And let's just call it, I don't know, mover 1. Hit enter, make sure it took. Okay, and we're going to add one more key val here. And this one's very important, otherwise this doesn't work. Cinematic. And we're going to put a 1. So let's just have a quick look at our key vals for our Func mover. Where is he? Here it is, Func mover, name mover 1, and a cinematic 1. Okay, so that does that. Next thing we want to do is we want to bind the camera to the mover. We can actually do that in our script, but we'll do that on the map today. So let's click our Func camera view. It's called camera 1, and we're going to bind that. Well, let's grab the name from that Func mover first. There it is there. And then let's click on the camera and let's just change the key to bind. Hit enter. And now our camera is bound to our mover. And again, we can do that in our script, but we'll just do it on the map for now. Okay, so here's our front camera view bound to mover 1. Okay, we're good. That's it for our map work. So let's go ahead and deselect everything. Let's save. Let's compile just to get it ready for us. Okay, there it is. Let's get out of our map. Let's open up our little scripts. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so we're back in our movie 2 script, and we're just turning our camera off and on here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make some space for myself. Now, normally when I get movers going, I have these 3 little commands right here that I like to use. So let's throw those in. I'll explain them in a moment, but we have some adjustments to make here because obviously our movers and everything are called differently. Okay, so we called our mover 1, right? Yeah, mover 1. Okay, don't forget that the names have to be correct, so we're going to change all this here. Mover 1, mover 1, mover 1. Okay, there we go. All right, so these 3 lines I always like to use, and if you know, we always have to, preface our whatever we're referencing in our script by a $sign. So mover 1, mover 1. These 3 lines here. This first line here, this point time 4, as we see in our notes here, it says how long the move takes. So I'm going to set that up to be, well, I'm going to actually extend it slightly. I'm going to put it to 5. So when we tell our mover to move, that move's going to take 5 seconds. Now you can also do this through speed as well as speed command, but I like time because that just lets me kind of organize the way the mover's working based on time. It's an easy unit to sort of understand. This next line here, accelerate time, so this command here, tells how fast that mover takes to get up to speed. Now we don't want it to snap to its final speed, especially if we have long moves, we don't want to snap. So this tells it to accelerate slowly up to speed, acceleration time of 1, and then I also like the deceleration. So if we have a dolly move, it kind of starts gradually, gets to its speed, and then it sort of stops gradually. So I always put these 3 commands in here, just by way of, it gives my movers a nice sort of motion. So that's that. Now it's not going to be doing anything. So what we're going to do first is let's take a look at our basic camera moves. So let's take a look at, let's see here, tilt up and down. So let's grab these here. Let's just copy these. I'm going to put them underneath our sort of acceleration deceleration time, which is here. Okay, good. And we have to change this because our mover is called mover 1. So we're going to go mover 1. And I'll explain this in a moment. Mover 1. Mover 1. Mover 1. Okay, we're good. So let's see here. What do we got? Okay, so our first command, we're going to tell this thing to tilt down. Okay, we got a little note here that tells us what this code's going to do. And the command for that is rotate once. Okay, so, and again, as it's case specific, so make sure that that O is capital letters. And the tilt, like these 3 integers here, is X, Y, Z. You'll have to figure out how they correlate, but for tilt, we want this first digit here, and they're 3 integers. There's no commas or anything, just separated by a space. And in order to tilt our camera down, we want to go -40 here. And then the next line here, system wait for mover. We want our system to say, hey, don't do anything else until that thing completes its total tilt down. So this is what the sys wait for mover 1 is. I'll stick it in there because, again, I don't want the system to do anything else until it finishes its tilt down. Then I want to wait a second, and then I want to move it back up again. So we're just going to put a +40 here instead of a -40 to tilt up. Again, we're going to tell the system to wait for that tilt up, and then we're going to wait for the whole time. It's going to take 5 seconds, and then it's going to come back to the camera off. So I think that should be okay. So I've gone ahead and saved that, and let's see what that does on the map. So if we just run our map, what should happen is it should go into the camera mode, and it's going to tilt up. Okay, and it's going to wait a second, and then it's going to tilt back down again. So there's our move. If we want that tilt to go faster or slower, we can just adjust that time, right? So, all right, so there's our tilt up and down. Now we've got actually these backwards because it tilted actually up first, didn't it? So we should fix this. Tilt down first. Sorry, tilt up. And then this is tilt down. I was trying to keep these videos short, but unfortunately, if I explain everything, the videos are going to be long. So let me just run that again. So our first tilt is up. Yeah. And then it tells the system to wait until that move is finished, and then it waits a second, and then it comes down again. So we're tilting up first. So let's just make sure my note is correct here. Yeah, tilt up, tilt down. Okay, so you'll have to adjust that. All right, so that's our tilt up and down. Now let's look at pan right and left. So let's go ahead and grab these. Copy. And let's put that below this. Okay, now what we want to do is we don't want to go through all these moves. So what we could do is we could disregard some of these lines here. Now, one way you could do it, again, each line could have 2 forward slashes, but there's a way you can get rid of whole blocks of code. So we start that by forward slash asterisk, and then where we want the code to end, which is here, we just go the opposite way, asterisk forward slash. And this is basically telling the engine, disregard everything between those two symbols. So it's going to disregard all this code here. Okay, just a little C++ trick. Okay, so again, we don't want to go through the whole tilt up and down thing again. We just want to see this pan right. Okay, so it's going to start here then, and then we have to fix this because this is mover 1. Let's just fix all of them. Mover 1. Oops. Mover 1. Mover 1. Mover 1. Okay, there we go. This is redundant. We don't need this line here. Okay, so let's explain this. So after this stops reading the script, which is where? There to there. Okay, so this is the code that we're going to be executing here. Okay, so the command for tilt right, again, is the same rotate once, but this time we use this integer here. So minus 40, this is probably going to go the opposite way of my notes. But so what we should see here at runtime is the camera should pan right, and then it should take 5 seconds to pan right. Then system's gonna wait for the mover to finish that move. Then it's gonna wait a second, and then it's gonna pan left. So let's just see how that looks. So I've saved that. I don't have to minimize that. We'll go into our map, and we should be getting some panning action. Let's just take note which way it pans. Okay, so it pans right first. System waits a second, and then pans left. Okay, there it is. So pan right first. Let's see if our notes are correct. Pan right first. Okay, so these notes are correct. So pan right, pan left. Okay, so let's hide all this code or tell the system to disregard it. All right, so let's delete that and let's tell it to disregard all the way down to here. So asterisk forward slash. Okay, there we go. Now let's take a look at, so we've tilted up and down, we pan right and left. So let's Dutch roll now. So let's bring up our scripts. Okay, and we got our Dutch roll down here. So let's go here. Copy. Let's put this line here. Okay, we have to change the name of the mover again. So it's mover 1. System wait for mover 1. Rotate once mover 1. System wait for mover 1. Okay, so let's have a look at these Dutch tilt commands. Those are the Dutch tilt commands. So the line is $ mover 1, rotate once. Okay, same as here before, but this time we're using this integer here. So if we Dutch tilt counterclockwise, it's minus 40, and clockwise is plus 40. So let's just make sure it does go counterclockwise first to make sure our notes are correct. Let's go into this. So we should do a counterclockwise Dutch roll first, and that is going counterclockwise. So our notes are correct. So there it goes. And you have to mess with the actual number to do whatever you need it to do. Okay, so there that is. So basically, this script here has pretty much every single static camera movement that we need. Tilt, pan, Dutch. And again, if you do want to copy the script, just drop me a note or an email and I can send it to you. So, all right, so that's a static camera moving in our 3 different ways. So let's take a look now at how to get this thing dollying left and right, dollying forward and back, and let's see how to crane it. So I'll do that right now. Okay, so let's take a look at moving our camera again, this time dollying left and right, dollying in and out, and craning up and down. Now, the one thing I did change here was just in my camera view, I got rid of the target null where it says the key val target null. I just got rid of it. It wasn't giving me any errors, but just for clarity, I just got rid of it. So make sure that there's no target assigned right now because I haven't got any nulls or anything assigned to that camera. Now, one thing about dollying and craning is you've got to get your direction straight here. Now, if you orientate your map to the top view, the commands are actually the way a map, just when you look at any kind of normal map, the directions actually correspond with the way we're going to script it. So if we're in our top view, you can see that our camera is here. I'm just going to highlight it here, and our marine is here. So the way this map is orientated, if we want to do a dolly in, for example, our direction is going to be east, right? So on this map, if we want to head in a direction from left to right, we're going to travel east. If we want to head in a direction right to left, we're going to be heading west. If we want to head in a direction that goes from, well, say we want to dolly left, our direction is going to be north. And if we want to dolly right, our direction is going to be south. All right. So the map directions are just like normal maps are, east, west, north, south. And then the other directions are just up and down. So if we're in our front view or side view, up and down is just up and down. You'll see what I'm getting at here in a second in our script. Okay, so let's jump into our scripts. And all I did here was I just took out this tilt up, down, right, left, and Dutch roll. And I moved them down here. I put them between the disregard commands, and I moved them outside our code. And we don't get any errors, just so it doesn't get cluttered up here. Okay, so what do we want to do first? We want to move this guy here, say dolly left and right first. So I'm just going to grab these commands right here, copy, and we're going to put them right up here. Okay, and we have to change the name of these movers, right? So mover 1. And mover 1 here. And I know it's a little redundant and I could do this off screen, but I think as you guys see me typing this stuff out, you kind of get a better sense of, how the scripting works. So, okay, so mover 1. Okay, there we've changed everything. So what we're doing first is we're telling our mover to move south 200. And if we take a look at if we notice the way our map is orientated, south is going to be down. So that's actually going to dolly right. So we've got to put this different here, right and left. Okay. Because the map that I was working on where I wrote this original script was actually flipped 180 degrees, that's why these commands are backwards. So our mover is going to dolly right, so it's going to head south 200 units. Then the system's going to wait for that mover to finish its dolly right. It's going to wait a second, and then it's going to dolly back left 200. So basically back to the start. System's going to wait for that mover to finish its dolly left, and then it's going to wait 5 seconds. So let me save that, and let's have a look at that. So we should go dolly right first, and then dolly left second. So let's see if that works. All right, so here we go dollying. So it's dollying right first. Takes 5 seconds for that move to happen. It's gone 200 units, waits a second, and then dollies left. So dolly right is our first move. Let's just make sure our notes are correct. So yeah, dolly right. Okay, so that's that. So that's dollying left and right. Let's have a look at dollying in and out. So let's just tell it to disregard this code here for now. And let's move it down the line so we could fit our new code in there. So we want to look at dollying in and out. So those are these commands right here. Let's put them right here. And we have to change the name of this mover. So mover 1, mover 1. Now, okay, guys, I get it. This is kind of boring, but look, we have to get our cameras moving correctly. Once we have the camera fundamentals down, then we can get into the fun stuff, and we're going to get onto that in the new video, in the, sorry, the next part of this video. Okay, so let's have a look at this real quick. So we're telling our mover 1 to move west. So west on our map is actually, see, again, this is backwards. So we want to dolly in first. So let's go east here. It has to be uppercase. Okay, and let's change this west. Okay, so the other map I took this code off of obviously was flipped 180 degrees. So, okay, so in order to move in, we have to go east 200 based on our map. So this is now correct. We're going to tell the system to wait for that mover to do its dolly in, wait a second, and it's going to dolly back. Okay, so let's have a look at that real quick. Let's save. We'll go back into the map. Now we should dolly in 200. And it might collide with the guy. I didn't measure it, but yeah, it's colliding with the guy. Okay, so it's going too far. And then it's going to go back. So I'll just show you by changing some numbers, we can tweak that real quick. So all we have to do is tweak that number a little bit. So we've gone too far. So I don't know. Let's go 150 here. And let's go 150 here. And you can see these numbers, once they're in, they're so easy to tweak, it's sickening. Okay, so that's correct. Now it shouldn't collide with the guy. Now you could draw reference brushes and get that exact measurement, but I'm just sort of eyeballing it. So now it's going to dolly in. Should stop in front of guy in a good close-up, and then dolly back out again. Okay, so that's our dolly in and out. So let's have a look at craning up and down. Okay, so let's go back into our script. Let's bring up our other script as well. Okay, so let's take this command here, X. Let's move it up to here. So we're just disregarding all the camera moves we're making for now, just because we don't want to have to watch them all. Okay, so we want to crane up and down. So let's grab this, copy. Let's put that in here. And all we have to do is change this mover 1. Mover 1. Now again, a little dry, a little boring, but you know, once we get these fundamentals down, the real fun stuff can start, right? And we'll wait here for mover 1. Okay, so what we're telling it to do here, we missed the line. We don't want this. We don't want dolly in and out. Okay, we'll just disregard that line here. Okay, so we're telling the mover to move up, and it doesn't matter which way we're facing, because up and down are just absolute. So we're saying mover move up 200, so that's a crane up. System wait for the mover to crane up. System wait 1 second after it cranes up, then it's going to crane down. So let's have a look at that. Okay, so we save that. Now we should crane up and crane down. Okay, so there's our crane up and down. So those are all the different, oh, we're going to go too far. We're going to go through the roof, but that's okay. And you know, we can tweak those numbers to get that just right. Okay, there it is there. Okay, good. Okay, a little messy, but I think you get the gist of it. Okay, and there's our crane up, crane down, dolly right, left. So that's pretty much all the dolly moves. Now, what if we want to do a combination of moves? So we're going to look at that now. So let's take a look at combining movements. It's a little bit of a heady topic, but let's just illustrate the point here real quick. In my script, what I did was I just set up a dolly move, and we'll just see that in a second here. So we're dollying to the right, and we can see that we're not staying focused on the player. So we need a combination move there. We want to dolly right, and we want to pan left at the same time. Now, unfortunately, as we saw earlier in the video, we used a target null to target the camera. Now, I have not been able to get moving cameras to follow a target null. So unfortunately, maybe I'm doing it wrong or something, but unfortunately, it's, from what I can see, it's not that simple. So if we want to dolly to the right and we want to keep the player in the middle of the frame, we have to combine the dolly with a rotation. So let's look at that real quick. Let's pop open our script, and here I've already scripted it here, dolly right, south, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to combine a pan. So if we're dollying right, we've got to pan left. So let's grab our pan move here. And we want to pan right. No, we want to pan left, actually. So we're moving right, we want to pan left. So let's grab this line here. Okay, and we're telling it to go here. So what we want to do is we want to put that line right here. Okay, and we're panning left. Now, I don't know if 40 is the correct amount. We'll try it. But basically, you can't combine movements as long as the movements don't contradict. And I'll illustrate that contradiction a little bit later, and we'll have a look at how to work around that. But as long as the moves aren't contradictory, it's no problem. You could put the two commands right below each other. So we're telling the mover here, move south, so dolly right 200. And while we're dollying right, we want to pan left. So hopefully that'll keep the player centered. So let's save that, and let's have a look at how that looks. Go into our map, and now we should be dollying right and we should be panning left, and that more or less actually keeps the guy in frame pretty well, so we don't need to tweak that a lot, and we can actually keep him centered on the dolly back too. So let's add that just for the fun of it. So we want to go pan right, so let's look down here. Let's grab this line here, copy it. And then when it dollies left, after it dollies left at the same time, we want to pan to the right. So dolly left, pan right. Okay, so that should be correct actually. So now we're going to be dollying left and right, and we should keep the guy centered in the camera. So let's look at that. So we're combining movements that don't contradict. Okay, so there he's centered in the frame. I mean, it's not, yeah, it's pretty close. Actually got kind of lucky there, but we can always tweak those numbers. So we can see we're combining moves here. We're doing a dolly left and right with a pan left and right. Okay, nice. Okay, so that's done. And if we just look at the way the kind of logic is in the script, it kind of reads everything at the same time. So that's why we're not having any problems here. It's basically the code is telling this line here, you know, pan right, and it drops to the next line almost instantaneously, and that's why it looks like a combined move. Okay, so what do I mean by contradictory moves? Well, say for example we wanted to move at a 45 here. So logic would tell us that we'd have to tell the mover to dolly in and dolly to the right. Well, you can't be in two places at once, right? That mover cannot be moving in and moving to the right at the same time. Those are contradictory moves. Okay, we can dolly left and right and pan and do other things like that. Certain combinations are fine, but certain combinations we can't do. All it's going to do is disregard the second line of that code. So if we tell it to dolly, you know, right and then move forward, the next line says move forward, it's only going to get that dolly right move. Okay, you kind of get the logic of that. But what happens if we want to move at a 45? Okay, well, we can do that with a spline. Now, I'm not going to illustrate splines because that's going to take a long time to explain. Now, we saw back in our spooky hallway how to, you know, create a spline, how to get a mover to follow the spline. We would just attach the camera to that mover and away we go. There's some issues with angles and other things that's going to end up taking a long time to explain. So I'm going to leave out splines, but we'll look at how to move the camera in a slightly different way, which is actually quite simple. So what we're going to do if we want to move this camera to 45 is we're actually just going to put a func static in here. So let me just grab my node draw texture, and I'm going to put a little func static in here, just 16 cubed. Okay, there we go, 16 cubed. We'll put it at our 45-degree angle here. We'll put it on this major grid line, and let's turn that into a func static. So down here, let's hit Shift-O to make sure that its origin is centered. And let's just rename that func static while we're at it. We'll name it something short and sweet. We'll go func fs1 for func static 1. Okay, there it is. And let's save and compile. Okay, and I just want to make sure that that func static is roughly at eye level. So it's the same level, so we're not going to get any up and down movements. You can move it up or down. Well, let's move it up just for the heck of it. Let's grab it. Whoops. Let's grab that func static. Where is it? Okay, there it is there. And let's say we want it to go up here. Okay. All right, so let's save and compile. Now, we're going to look at another command. It's going to allow us to make that 45-degree turn because we can't have conflicting commands. So our map work is done. So let's go into our script, that one. And we're going to look at a command here just in a second. Let me just tidy this up. I want to get rid of all this dolly stuff. So let's go this. We're going to just tell it to disregard this code here. Okay, we know how to do that. Okay, so let's go asterisk, whoops, asterisk /. Okay, so we're just going to disregard this code here. All right, so let's put in a command here. And this is kind of handy if we want to have kind of a diagonal move. Copy here. Okay, let's put this here. I just borrowed this out of an id map, so we have to do a little bit of fixing here. Okay, so our mover is called mover 1. And our func static is just fs1, I do believe. Let me double check that. So remember, the names have to be exactly right. Okay, entity fs1, no underscores. And we got it there, fs1. Okay, perfect. So the command we want here is simple. It's just this line here. It's telling mover 1, and the command is move 2. Okay, just make sure it's to have that capital T because it is case sensitive, space, and within parentheses we tell it what to move to. In this case, it's our func static 1 with a $, and of course our semicolon. Now, what this is telling this is that we want that func mover to move where that func static is, and basically, to be exactly precise, if we look at our camera, we can see that there is an origin. If we zoom in with a little red dot and it's centered because we always hit Shift-O, basically when we tell an entity to move to another entity, that func camera's origin is going to come exactly to the origin of that func static. So just to be precise. So if we save that, now our guy's going to go out of view because we'd have to do a combination move, a pan and tilt, and that to keep him in the frame. But just to illustrate this, let's jump into the map. And now we're going to see that our camera should move to where our func static is, and there it is. Okay, so that's if we want to get sort of diagonal movements. Okay, well, you know, I think that covers the basic movements of camera. It's a little dry, a little longer than I would like to, but through all these commands, basically, we can get our camera running in any direction that we want. And again, if you want a copy of this script, just shoot me off an email or, you know, comment in the video below. I should get an alert for it, and I can email this little script to you, and that'll give you a starting point of all these different commands, and that gives you anything you need with respect to all the different camera movements other than splines. And again, it's a little complicated, so we're going to skip over that. So that should conclude this video. That'll get your camera moving. In the next video, we'll have a look at see how we get our characters moving. And by the way, we can bind cameras to characters, so that is very cool, and I'll show that in an upcoming video. And in the third part, we'll look at creating a very simple cinematic. So that'll cover it for today. Thanks for watching. Be sure to catch part 2 of our 3-part cinematics mini-series coming up. We'd like to thank our subscribers, and now's as good a time as any to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you for watching, stay well, and all the best.